Welcome back to the channel. We've all been there. You're sitting by your phone, waiting for that text or call to come through. You know he's thinking about you. You know he's dying to reach out, yet he doesn't. And you wonder, why? Why won't he just contact me first? Well, buckle up, because the truth you're about to hear might shock you. We've all experienced it, sitting by your phone, hoping for a message or a call, yet nothing comes through. You know he's probably thinking about you, and you know he's likely dying to reach out, but for some reason, he doesn't. The truth is, it's not about you. It's not because you're not worth it, or because he isn't interested. There's a deeper psychological dynamic at play here that many people overlook. He may not be contacting you because of fears or insecurities that are about him, not about your connection or the potential between the two of you. One of the biggest reasons he might be holding back is the fear of rejection. Rejection can sting, and for many men, the idea of putting themselves out there only to be met with silence or indifference is terrifying. It's a vulnerable position to be in, especially when they're uncertain of how you feel. The truth is, he's probably wondering whether you feel the same way, and he's afraid of the possibility that you won't. This fear can keep him from making the first move, even though his desire to contact you is strong. Another factor that plays into this is the desire to maintain control over how available he appears. Men often fear being labeled as too eager or too available, especially in the early stages of dating. There's a belief that if they contact you first, they'll seem desperate or needy, and that can be a turnoff. The truth is, while this strategy might seem like a way to protect his image, it often ends up causing confusion, leaving you wondering why he isn't reaching out when it seems so obvious that he wants to. He's caught in a web of trying to balance his feelings with how he wants to be perceived. There's also the possibility that he's testing your level of interest. Men, just like women, can be unsure about how deeply someone is invested in a relationship. If he's always the one making the first move, he might begin to wonder whether you're just going along for the ride or if you're truly interested in him. He might pull back and wait to see if you'll take the initiative and show him that you care. Unfortunately, this approach often leads to a stalemate where both parties are unsure of the other's feelings, leading to unnecessary distance. Sometimes he simply doesn't know what to say. The pressure to say the right thing can be overwhelming, especially if he's trying to keep things light and not overstep any boundaries. Instead of sending a message that he might later second guess, he stays silent, even though he's dying to contact you. He might be worried about saying the wrong thing, sounding too forward, or miscommunicating his feelings. It's a common issue many men face when they're emotionally invested but unsure of how to express it. So, while he may seem distant, it's not a reflection of his feelings for you, it's a reflection of his internal struggle. We've all been in that situation where you're waiting for a text, a call, or just some sign that he's thinking about you. You can feel that he's probably dying to contact you, but he doesn't, and it leaves you wondering why. The truth is, it's often not about you at all. It's about his own fears and insecurities that hold him back. And one of the biggest factors is the fear of rejection. Rejection can be a painful experience, and for many men, it's something they try to avoid at all costs. The thought of putting themselves out there only to be met with silence or indifference is terrifying, and that fear can keep them from reaching out even when they desperately want to. When a man is afraid of rejection, he starts to imagine all the worst-case scenarios. He wonders if you'll respond the way he hopes, or if you'll just ignore him altogether. He questions whether you really feel the same way, or if his feelings are one-sided. This kind of self-doubt can be paralyzing, and instead of taking the risk and contacting you, he may choose to stay silent, fearing the potential sting of rejection. What's interesting is that while he's worrying about rejection, it's this very fear that often keeps him from getting the connection he wants, because his hesitation creates distance. It's not just about the fear of rejection itself, but the vulnerability that comes with it. For many men, showing their feelings and putting themselves in a position where they might be turned down feels like a major risk. Being vulnerable means exposing a part of themselves that they might not be ready to share, especially if they don't know how you'll respond. The more they care, the harder it is to open up. This vulnerability makes them hesitant to reach out first because they're not sure if you'll meet them where they are emotionally. Instead of taking that leap, they hold back, playing it safe in an attempt to protect themselves from emotional hurt. Sometimes men who are afraid of rejection will convince themselves that it's better to just let things play out. They may tell themselves that if you're interested, you'll reach out first. This idea can feel like a protective mechanism against the potential pain of being rejected. In reality, this strategy often leads to misunderstandings because both people end up waiting for the other to make a move. The man, in this case, is not acting out of indifference, but rather from a place of fear and insecurity. Unfortunately, this fear of rejection can create a cycle of inaction, where neither person expresses their true feelings. The bottom line is that the fear of rejection can be one of the most powerful forces keeping him from contacting you first, even when he wants to. It's not because he doesn't care, but because he's afraid of the emotional fallout if things don't go the way he hopes. The key here is to understand that his silence isn't a reflection of your worth or how he feels about you. It's a sign that he's struggling with his own fears and insecurities. If you want to break through that barrier, sometimes all it takes is a little reassurance or a nudge in the right direction, allowing him to feel safe enough to reach out. It's a bit of a strange dynamic, but sometimes a man may hold back from contacting you first because he's afraid of seeming too available or too eager. This may sound counterintuitive, especially when you're sitting there wondering why he hasn't reached out when it seems so obvious that he's interested. The truth is, many men worry about coming on too strong in the early stages of dating. There's this unspoken rule that if you're too available, you risk looking desperate or overly eager. It's almost as if there's a fine line between showing genuine interest and appearing like you have nothing else going on in your life. And so, in an attempt to avoid being seen as too eager, he may hold back, even though he's dying to contact you. This fear of being perceived as too available is often rooted in concerns about his own image. He doesn't want to come across as someone who's constantly chasing after you or who doesn't have a life outside of his interactions with you. The idea is that if he's always the one reaching out, he might risk looking like he's too focused on you and not enough on other things. It's this complex balancing act where he doesn't want to appear too invested, but at the same time, he's afraid of missing an opportunity to connect with someone he really likes. Unfortunately, this mindset can lead to confusion and frustration for the other person, who may be left wondering why he's not making the effort. What's interesting is that this hesitation often stems from the desire to create a sense of mystery or to maintain some level of control in the early stages of dating. There's this idea that if he seems too eager, you might lose interest, thinking that he doesn't have other options or isn't as independent as you might like. In reality, what he doesn't realize is that by holding back, he might actually be creating more distance and uncertainty. Instead of fostering a connection, he's playing a game of cat and mouse that only adds to the confusion. For him, the challenge lies in trying to strike the right balance. He wants to show you that he's interested, but he also doesn't want to seem too available. This may seem like a strange game, but for many men, it's a way to protect themselves from the vulnerability of looking too invested too soon. He might be genuinely interested, but because he's unsure about how you feel, he might pull back to avoid the risk of being perceived as clingy or needy. It's a defense mechanism that can backfire if he's not careful, as it leaves both parties unsure about each other's intentions. The reason he doesn't contact you first, even though he might be dying to, is because of this internal struggle. He wants to be seen as someone who's independent, confident, and not overly available. It's a tricky balance to strike, and more often than not, he might overthink it to the point of inaction. While he's waiting for the right moment to reach out, you might be left in the dark, unsure of where things stand. The key here is understanding that his hesitation isn't a reflection of your worth or his interest in you, but rather a byproduct of his own insecurities and fears about how he'll be perceived. Sometimes, when a man doesn't contact you first, It may be because he's unconsciously testing your level of interest. It's not that he's unsure about his own feelings. Rather, he might be uncertain about where you stand. If he notices that you're always the one initiating contact, he may begin to wonder if you're genuinely invested in him, or if he's just a temporary option while you wait for someone better to come along. It's a strange cycle that happens where instead of reaching out to confirm his feelings, he holds back, thinking that by doing so, he can gauge how much you actually care. In his mind, he's not acting out of disinterest. He's trying to figure out whether you're just passing time with him or if you're truly emotionally invested. This kind of testing behavior comes from a place of insecurity, even if he doesn't recognize it himself. Men, like anyone, have an ego that they want to protect, and they can be especially sensitive about being in a relationship where they might not be the primary focus. If he's always the one making the first move, he might feel like he's putting in all the effort without getting the same energy in return. This can lead him to question whether you're really interested or if you're just keeping him around as a fallback. In this case, withholding contact is his way of testing the waters, waiting to see if you'll make the first move to show that you care about him as much as he cares about you. What's difficult about this dynamic is that it's often a defense mechanism. Instead of directly communicating his concerns or his desire for more reciprocation, he pulls back to protect his own feelings. By waiting for you to reach out, he might feel like he's in control of the situation and that he's not the only one who is emotionally invested. He doesn't want to risk putting himself in a vulnerable position by putting his heart on the line without knowing where you stand. In his mind, this approach makes him feel less exposed, but in reality, it creates confusion and distance between the two of you. Unfortunately, this testing approach often leads to a cycle of misunderstanding. While he's waiting for you to show your interest, you might be wondering why he's not reaching out, thinking that he's not interested at all. This lack of communication can create frustration and confusion for both people involved. You may feel like you're the only one making the effort, and he might feel like you're not emotionally committed to the relationship. If neither of you takes the step to address the issue openly, it can keep the connection stuck in limbo, with both people unsure of the other's true feelings. The reason he doesn't contact you first, even though he might be dying to, is because of this internal fear and desire to protect himself. He's testing the waters to see if you're as invested as he is, but in doing so, he's only making the situation more complicated. If he could just communicate his insecurities and trust in your feelings, it would break the cycle. But instead, he's caught up in his own doubts, which ultimately leave both of you wondering where you stand. Understanding that this behavior often comes from a place of insecurity and a desire to protect his ego can help you navigate the situation with more patience and empathy. Overthinking can be a major factor in why a man won't contact you first, even though it seems like he's dying to. Men, like anyone else, can get caught in their own heads, constantly analyzing the situation and wondering how their actions will be perceived. He might find himself thinking about what to say, how to say it, and whether the timing is right. In his mind, every word matters, and he wants to make sure that his message will be received in the best possible way. It becomes a mental loop where he repeatedly goes over the conversation, imagining all sorts of scenarios and wondering whether reaching out first will send the wrong message. This overthinking process can stop him from acting at all, even though deep down he truly wants to. The pressure to get everything right can be overwhelming, and the longer he goes without reaching out, the more the pressure builds. He worries about how his text or call will come across and whether it will make him appear too eager, too casual, or too distant. He may even start to question whether now is the right time to contact you, or if it will seem out of place. This mental back and forth can feel exhausting for him, and rather than making a decision and sending that message, he ends up paralyzed by the fear of making the wrong move. In his mind, it's better to do nothing than risk saying the wrong thing. Instead of just reaching out like he might want to, he finds himself stuck in a cycle of second guessing. He's overthinking every detail, from the tone of his words to the timing of his message. The anxiety around saying something inappropriate or coming across as too forward can be overwhelming. It's not that he isn't interested in you, but the idea of miscommunicating his feelings makes him hesitate. He's not necessarily worried about rejection. It's more about the fear of saying the wrong thing and causing confusion. So rather than sending that text and risking making a mistake, he convinces himself that it's safer to wait and keep analyzing the situation. The problem with overthinking is that it often leads to inaction, which only increases the uncertainty in the situation. As he waits for the perfect moment or the perfect wording, time passes and his opportunity to reach out starts to feel like it's slipping away. Meanwhile, you're left wondering why he hasn't contacted you, thinking that he's not interested or that he doesn't care. But in reality, he's stuck in his own mind, going through a mental checklist of possible outcomes. The longer he takes to act, the more complex the situation becomes, until he feels completely overwhelmed by all the possibilities and uncertainties. At the end of the day, his overthinking is not a reflection of how he feels about you, but rather a result of his internal struggle with fear and anxiety. He may want to reach out, but the fear of making a mistake keeps him from doing so. This cycle of overanalyzing is mentally exhausting, and it often leads to him doing nothing instead of just taking the leap. Understanding that his hesitation comes from overthinking can help you see the situation from his perspective. If he could find a way to quiet his mind and trust in the natural flow of things, he'd likely reach out without all the hesitation, but for now, he's stuck in his own loop, waiting for the right moment that never seems to come. Sometimes, when a man doesn't contact you first, it's because he's waiting for you to take the lead. This doesn't mean that he isn't interested or that he's lost interest in you, but rather that he's curious about how much you're willing to invest in the relationship. In many cases, men often feel the pressure of always being the one to initiate contact, and over time, that pressure can become overwhelming. He might begin to wonder if the dynamic is always going to be one-sided, with him doing all the work. This feeling can leave him hesitant as he starts to wonder whether you're truly invested in taking things forward, or if you're just content to let him do all the heavy lifting. It's not that he doesn't want to reach out, but he may be waiting to see if you'll step up. He wants to know if you're equally interested in pursuing a connection with him. By waiting for you to make the first move, he's testing the waters to see if you'll take charge and show him that you're just as committed to the relationship as he is. There's a part of him that wants to be reassured that this isn't a one-sided effort. Men, like anyone else, can feel vulnerable and insecure, especially in the early stages of a relationship. They want to know that the feelings they have are reciprocated, and sometimes that means waiting for a sign from you that you're ready to take a more active role. In some cases, he may feel like he's been the one initiating contact for a while, and that it's now your turn to take the lead. It's not about playing games or trying to manipulate the situation. It's more about balancing the effort and showing that both of you are equally invested in building something meaningful. The idea is that relationships should be a partnership where both people contribute equally. If he constantly feels like he's the one driving the connection forward, he may start to wonder if you're genuinely as interested as he is, or if you're simply waiting for him to do all the work. By stepping back and allowing you to make the first move, he's giving you the opportunity to show him that you're just as eager to build the relationship. This isn't a sign of disinterest, but rather a reflection of his desire to ensure that things are mutual. He may not be reaching out because he's testing your level of commitment, not because he doesn't care. He's curious if you're as emotionally involved as he is. When a man feels that he's the only one initiating or putting in the effort, it can make him question whether you're really in this for the same reasons. By waiting for you to take charge, he's hoping for a sign that the connection is worth pursuing from both sides. While his silence might seem like a lack of interest, it's actually a way for him to gauge your feelings. He's not trying to play games or make things difficult. He simply wants to know that you're equally as invested in moving the relationship forward. It's a subtle way of seeing if the effort is mutual and if you're ready to take the next step together. His hesitation isn't about doubt in you, but about making sure that both of you are on the same page and ready to contribute equally to the relationship. Sometimes when a man doesn't contact you first, it's because he genuinely respects your space. He may care about you deeply, but he recognizes the importance of not coming across as overwhelming or clingy. He doesn't want to make you feel pressured or like you have to respond immediately. This can be especially true if he's aware that you've got a busy schedule or personal space that you value. By giving you that room to reach out on your own terms, he's showing you that he respects your boundaries and isn't trying to invade your space, even though he's likely thinking about you. This desire to respect your space comes from a place of maturity and understanding. He knows that relationships should be built on mutual respect, and part of that is allowing the other person to have their own time, independence, and freedom. A man who values you wants to make sure that he's not crowding your life or demanding more attention than you're comfortable giving. Sometimes his silence is simply his way of showing consideration for your need to have time to yourself or to focus on other things, without the constant expectation of him reaching out. It's easy to mistake this silence for disinterest, but it's often the opposite. He may be holding back because he's giving you space to breathe and come to him when you feel ready. He's not trying to distance himself, but instead, he's giving you the space to initiate contact when it feels right for you. This is his way of showing you that he trusts you to take the lead when you want to, and he's not forcing the connection. In his mind, if the connection is real, you'll reach out when you're ready, and he's okay with that. By respecting your space, he's also showing that he doesn't want to pressure you into anything. Relationships should feel natural, and the best ones grow without the constant need for constant communication. He's not trying to make you chase him or play any games. Rather, he's trying to avoid overwhelming you. If he's not contacting you first, it might be because he's allowing you the time to decide when and how you want to move forward. This approach can create a healthier, more balanced dynamic where both people feel comfortable and not under constant pressure. His hesitation to contact you first is likely a reflection of his respect for you and your autonomy. He's not trying to play hard to get or be distant. He simply wants to make sure that you have the space you need. He's giving you room to breathe and make your own decisions about when you want to reach out. If you want the relationship to progress, it's important to recognize that this space he's offering is a sign of respect, not a lack of interest. It's his way of ensuring that both of you can move forward at a pace that feels natural and comfortable. In the early stages of dating, many men try to maintain a sense of coolness. Even when they are deeply interested, they don't want to come across as desperate or overly eager because they fear that showing too much enthusiasm might turn the other person off. This mindset is often influenced by societal expectations or previous experiences where being too available was perceived as a negative trait. The goal is to keep things light and not appear too eager, as they believe this will make them seem more attractive or mysterious. However, this attempt at maintaining coolness can often backfire, leaving the person they're interested in confused and unsure of where they stand. In his mind, not reaching out immediately is part of this strategy to avoid seeming too forward. He's trying to strike a balance between showing interest without coming across as too needy. There's a belief that if he contacts you too soon or too often, he may appear desperate, which could potentially push you away. This anxiety about being perceived as too eager often makes him second-guess himself, causing him to hold back from reaching out. The truth is, while he's trying to maintain this calm, composed demeanor, he's actually overthinking the situation, and in the process is causing unnecessary distance between the two of you. The difficulty with this strategy is that it creates a sense of uncertainty. While he may be holding back to preserve his image, you're left wondering why he isn't making the effort to reach out. The hesitation to contact you first might make you question his level of interest. You might even start to feel like he's not as invested as you originally thought. This is a common pitfall in the early stages of dating, where both parties are trying to play it cool, but in the process they end up sending mixed signals. His desire to appear indifferent can leave you feeling neglected or unsure of his feelings. While this behavior might be driven by good intentions, he wants to appear confident and self-assured, it often leads to a lack of communication. He's so focused on not appearing too eager that he forgets that genuine communication is key to building a connection. This lack of contact while he's trying to maintain his cool can leave you feeling frustrated or confused. It's easy to misunderstand his silence as disinterest, but in reality, it's just him overthinking how he should come across. He may not realize that what he sees as keeping his cool might actually create emotional distance rather than build intimacy. His hesitation to contact you first is a reflection of his desire to avoid appearing overly eager or desperate. While he's trying to protect his image and play it cool, he might not realize that this strategy often causes more harm than good. If he could simply be more open and reach out without worrying about coming across as too much, it would create a stronger connection. Unfortunately, his attempt to manage his image and maintain a sense of coolness often leaves both of you in a space of uncertainty. His silence isn't about a lack of interest, but rather his attempt to navigate the delicate balance of showing enough interest without appearing overly invested too soon. For many men, the act of reaching out first can be intimidating because it involves putting themselves in a vulnerable position. When a man likes someone, he may feel a deep sense of uncertainty about how his feelings will be received. The fear of rejection is real, and for some men, it feels easier to hold back than to put themselves out there emotionally. They may worry that contacting you first could be seen as too eager, or that it might lead to an uncomfortable situation if the feelings aren't reciprocated. This fear of vulnerability makes them hesitant, as they don't want to risk experiencing emotional pain if the connection doesn't work out. Opening up emotionally is something that can be challenging for a lot of men. Society often teaches men to suppress their emotions and to avoid being seen as weak or overly sensitive. As a result, they may find it hard to express how they truly feel, especially when it comes to matters of the heart. The idea of putting their emotions on the line by reaching out first can feel daunting. They may fear that doing so will expose them to potential rejection, which can feel like an emotional blow to their ego. Instead of risking that vulnerability, they might hold back, even if they are eager to contact you. This hesitation can also be driven by past experiences where they have opened up and been hurt. If they've faced rejection or had their feelings dismissed in the past, they might be particularly wary of making the same mistake again. As a result, they might overthink the situation, convincing themselves that not reaching out is the safer option. In their mind, if they don't make the first move, they're not as exposed to the risk of rejection, even though it might leave the other person wondering about their level of interest. The fear of being vulnerable often keeps them trapped in a cycle of indecision and silence. For him, the fear of vulnerability isn't just about the potential for rejection. It's also about wanting to maintain control over his emotions. When he reaches out first, he's essentially giving you the power to influence how he feels. This can feel unsettling for someone who's not used to opening up emotionally. He may want to protect himself from feeling hurt or disappointed if things don't progress as he hopes. In his mind, waiting for you to contact him first gives him a sense of control and reduces the emotional risk, even if it means he's not acting on his feelings. His hesitation to contact you first, despite wanting to, comes down to the fear of being vulnerable. He's not avoiding you out of disinterest, but rather because reaching out requires him to take an emotional risk that he's not sure he's ready to take. This fear can cause him to hold back, leaving you wondering why he hasn't made the first move. However, it's important to recognize that his reluctance is a reflection of his own internal struggle with vulnerability and not necessarily a reflection of how he feels about you. If given the right environment where he feels safe to express himself, he might eventually take that step forward. Sometimes, when a man doesn't contact you first, it's simply because he doesn't know what to say. The pressure to find the perfect words can be overwhelming, especially if he's trying to express his feelings in a way that will come across clearly. He might be worried that his message won't sound right or that it could be misinterpreted. This fear of saying the wrong thing often causes him to hesitate, even though he may desperately want to reach out. Instead of risking sending something that feels awkward or unclear, he chooses to stay silent, paralyzed by the fear that his words might not convey what he truly feels. The desire to get it just right can create a mental block. He's thinking about how his message will be received, analyzing every possible outcome and wondering if it will be too much or not enough. The uncertainty around how you'll react to his message makes him second-guess everything. He might find himself crafting several drafts in his mind, trying to come up with the right tone or phrasing. But ultimately, he never sends anything because he's afraid of not getting it right. What he doesn't realize is that his indecision can leave the other person feeling neglected or confused when all he's trying to do is protect himself from saying the wrong thing. The difficulty he faces in crafting the perfect message is compounded by the fear of being misunderstood. Men can often be cautious about how they express their feelings, worried that they'll come across as too intense, too casual, or even too distant. This fear of miscommunication makes it even harder for him to take action, as he's so focused on how to phrase his thoughts that he ends up not sending anything at all. He doesn't want to risk putting himself out there and having his words be misinterpreted, which causes him to retreat into silence instead of making the first move. This type of hesitation is not a sign of disinterest. It's more about his internal struggle with the pressure of saying the right thing. He might be thinking that it's better to say nothing than to send a message that could come across as awkward or unclear. This can feel frustrating to the other person, especially if it seems like he's avoiding contact. But in reality, it's his way of trying to protect himself from potential rejection or embarrassment. He wants to be sure that when he does reach out, he does so in a way that feels authentic and genuine, which is why he may choose to remain silent instead of taking a chance with words he feels uncertain about. At the end of the day, his reluctance to contact you first is driven by a deep desire to communicate effectively and to avoid saying something he might regret. His silence isn't a reflection of his lack of interest, but rather his internal battle with perfectionism and the fear of getting it wrong. The pressure to convey the right message can be so paralyzing that he ends up doing nothing at all. If he could let go of the need for everything to be perfect, he might be more willing to reach out and express himself in a way that feels natural. But for now, he's stuck in the cycle of overthinking and silence.